All righty. Hello, everybody. I have a new streaming setup right now. So let me know if everything looks okay. Am I in frame? Am I set up? Can you hear me? I've got my AirPods in from my microphone, and I'm monitoring this from my computer right here. So I can see all your chats. I can see everything you're asking. Should be able to share links if I have anything I need to share. And yeah, welcome everybody to the Saturday live stream. First AMA in probably what, like 4 or 5 months. It's been a little bit since we've had a live stream, but looking forward to getting started today and answering your questions. So yeah, I guess I'll give people a minute to get logged in and set up and asking those questions. Yes. Hello, Steve. Hello, Will. Thanks for joining in. Appreciate you joining the live stream today. I tried to do a live stream at a kind of a different time than what we normally do. Obviously, for those of you who have joined the Let's Talk Shit episodes that Paul and I do, those are usually in the evening, mostly because it works a little bit better for our kind of split schedule. That said, this stream is kind of around lunchtime for me. I think afternoon time for the UK, afternoon time for the most of Europe. Unfortunately for our Australian and Japanese viewers, it is a little too late for them in the middle of the night. So let's see, who else is in here? Ben Singleton, good morning from Seattle. Thanks for your content in the process of getting my first Mini. That's very exciting. Congratulations. I hope you find one that you love. And thanks for joining in Seattle. I know it's kind of early there for a Saturday morning. Hey, Mom, thanks for joining. Hey, Dad, as well. Will says he broke his laptop and fell off the roof. What? You're watching this from the roof? What are you doing up there? Um, Mark Price says, "Hi, mate. Great mini. Thank you." Yep, right behind me here. I decided to kind of set up the live stream so that we have this in view today rather than my big workbench on the other side. I got this new movable one, so I can kind of set it up wherever I want it, which is really, really nice. But that way, if you guys have any questions about the EFI system, fuel injection, I can bring you guys right over here and show it to you, which would be pretty cool. Steve says, you didn't follow it, did you? Oh, follow the laptop off of the roof? Yeah, I hope you didn't, Will. Don't want you to get hurt. Plus, how are you going to do all that mountain biking if you're hurt? Gonzalo says, regards from Chile. Thank you for joining. What time is it in Chile right now? I think you guys are pretty close to the Pacific time zone down. I moved down South America. Is that right? Let me know. All right. So while we wait for other folks to get in here and start asking questions, because this is an AMA, this is all about answering your questions, anything about the mini, anything about life. We can talk about whatever you guys want to today. We'll dive into anything, no matter how detailed it is. And I will do my best to answer all the questions for you that I can. But for those of you who don't know, um, who haven't seen my most recent episode, I did just do kind of like a full basics, everything you need to know about getting into and starting a fuel injected mini conversion. This is coming from a carburetor over to a fuel injected car. Um, this is kind of similar on SPI and MPI minis. However, it's not totally one-to-one on those cars, but it is very, very similar. Cover all the basics about like what sensors you need, what parts you need. One of those parts being one that we just launched, which is the fuel injected throttle body. That's what controls the fueling into your engine, which is pretty cool. And Gonzalez says brunch time. Nice. That's my favorite time of day. You can still drink coffee without it being like totally weird. Like I think afternoon coffee is not my jam, but and all the best foods are at brunch time, I think. So Steve has a question. Cole, one to start off. So far, what have you found the most difficult and most satisfying part of the EFI conversion so far? So that's a couple questions. The first one is, what was the most difficult? I think the most difficult is like really truly understanding the things you need on a fuel injected setup. as opposed to like things that other people think that are good to have and they tell you that you need it as you're doing research, or oh, you're fuel injecting a car. Kind of sifting through all of the kind of half information that's out there. And it's especially true for the Mini because it's that way for carbureted and the SPI and MPI Minis. There's a lot of kind of half information out on the internet, which can be pretty frustrating. But I think that it's probably the most difficult part. But as long as you're patient through it and kind of just read in between the lines and be hypercritical of the things that people are telling you, not because you don't trust them, but just because you want to do your due diligence. That part's pretty straightforward and easy to get through. I'd say the most satisfying part, though, is honestly once you have the sensors wired and once you have the items kind of in place in the car. Um, it is so easy to make changes. Previously, when you'd have a carb, you'd have a needle, and fuel would be controlled by that needle. And then you'd be, as air would come in, it would allow more fuel and air into the engine. But it was all very static and controlled. And so, if you ever had to make a change, it was kind of witchcraft isn't quite the right word, but it was tedious and it wasn't always an easy process to just tweak one little thing on the carb to make it work properly. And in some situations, you run into a place where you just simply need a new needle, and that doesn't happen with a fuel injected setup. You might need different injectors, but once you have the injectors that suit your engine, as you're going through the power band, you literally just change values in effectively a spreadsheet. And as soon as you change that value, you see differences in the fueling, you see differences in the behavior. So that's probably my favorite part. It's weirdly enough, even though there's more sensors and more complexity to the setup as a whole, it's easier to work with. Next question here is from Mark Price. He says, did you change the gearing with the diff? So with my car, I did change the gearing a little bit, and I've had a few different final drive gears over the years. So when I had my 1293 naturally aspirated engine, no turbo, dual carburetor, kind of, traditional fast road car, I had a 2.95 to 1 in my car. And I went with that at the time because I really wanted it to drive well on the highway. And I didn't want to be just bogged down bogged down is the wrong word. I didn't want the RPMs to be, skyrocketing to the moon. It's miserable when it's really loud like that. So initially I went with a 2.95, which is really nice on the highway, but you kind of lose out a lot at the bottom end. With the turbocharged setup, I also converted my gears to an Evolution gear set from Mini Spares, which has a really close ratio set of gears. Fourth gear is still the same, but 1 through 3, their ratios are closer together, so you have less RPM and power loss in between them. And with that gear set and that close ratio set, I ended up opting to go to a 3.1 diff, which seems to be the kind of perfect balance between having a lot of power down low and it being pretty good on the highway. It's still loud, but I actually have a gearbox calculator on my website. It's classicminidiy.com. If you go over to that website, I have a gearbox calculator that lets you plug in your gears and then the different final drive gears. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward, but it does provide you information like what RPM are you going to be at a certain speed and what's going to be your top speed? What's going to be the speed that you need to get off the line, those types of things. So I would definitely tell you, go ahead and check that out. And I will put that in the chat here using a keyboard I haven't used before. So bear with me here. I always feel like I've completely forgotten how to type, and it's literally my job to type. All right. So that's my technical website. That'll get you over there, and you'll see the gearbox calculator in that list. Let's see here. Gonzalo Navarro says the most difficult part is set up the slow RPM mapping. Yes. So I'm lucky in my setup. I used an idle air control valve, which really helps setting that low RPM. I can actually get this idling at about 700 RPM, which is crazy. I've never been able to get it to idle that low. And it's awesome. But that I think is due specifically to the idle air control. That is running a closed loop system. It's something in the Haltech ECU, but it is a common concept. And basically, it's for lack of a better word, it has a lot of automated tuning where it tries to keep your air fuel ratio at a certain level, whatever you set it to, based on how much flow and air you're getting in there. It's pretty cool. Kevin Shale says, is there anything you miss from when it was supercharged compared to being turbocharged? Um, Not a whole lot. I would say the biggest thing that I miss, and I noticed this when I went on my recent trip where I got to drive it all over the mountains while it was still carbureted. Um, there is a noticeable difference because of the turbo lag. So when you're climbing up those mountain hills, you try and with a turbo setup, I end up having to keep it at a higher RPM, which is not really that hard. It's just a difference. It's kind of a different way of driving. With the supercharger, you had that power almost instantly down low. There was no lag, so you got a lot of a lot of torque really quickly, but gradually. And the turbocharger has just been a shift. It's been an adjustment. That's all. But I think I like the way that the turbo behaves more than the supercharger overall. The noises are pretty intoxicating, if I'm honest, like that spool up noise, and of course the blow off. It's all you get. It's like it's visceral. You get into the drive a lot more than I did with the supercharger, even though the supercharger had a really cool whine. Let's see here. Ben Singleton says, in considering upgrading my stock Mini 90s Mini at 62 horsepower, upgrading to say a Cooper conversion, taking it to 85 to 90 horsepower, what kind of stress does this put on the lower, i.e., rings and pistons? Um, so when you are talking about upgrading it to a Cooper conversion, what kinds of upgrades are you considering there? That'll kind of help me understand. I'm not familiar with the kind of Cooper conversion, or at least that naming convention. I'm probably familiar with the parts that get upgraded. Yeah, let me know what you're thinking about, and then I can kind of give you a little bit more guidance there. Team Ballylock Classics, thank you for joining. Hello, welcome. All right. So you guys might see, while we're waiting for some other questions to roll in, off to the corner here is our Cooper S engine. This is the Cooper S engine that I'm building for Will. And we're getting, as you can see, it's almost all put together. And we're going to be putting it on the test bench really soon. Pretty excited about that. There's a really nice set of dual carburetors you can see up on that shelf over there. Why don't I just get those? I'll show them to you. So we are going to be going with the kind of original style dual HS2 carbs. And this is actually what was on my car to begin with. I love these carburetors. They're so nice on a 1275 on a built engine, because you just get this really, really nice low end torque. And you just simply don't get that with a single carburetor. At least it doesn't feel the same. And I'm so excited about putting these on there. This is a fully rebuilt set. He bought this from the UK, had it shipped over here. And I mean, they look gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So that's going to be a fun build, fun thing to set up. And I'm actually going to be bench running that engine. So I've got a old subframe that was sent to me from Kev at the Gentleman's Motor Racing Team. If you haven't seen his channel, strongly recommend you check that out. It's really good stuff. But he sent me an old subframe that was, messed up and not really usable for a car. And we chopped it up a little bit and I built a stand out of it. It's in my storage unit. I haven't gotten it out yet, but you guys will see it. And we'll be using that to run in the engine to get it started. All right, Ben Singleton says, effectively stage 1, stage 2 type conversion, head, exhaust, no rally, just daily driver with more pep. I would say that you probably won't see a ton of strain, additional strain on the engine. If the rings and the pistons are older and they're tired, you might get a little bit more blow by. You might see a little bit more crankcase ventilation happening. But the Mini's engine is, despite it being kind of unreliable in some setups, it it overall is a pretty robust engine, like all things said and done. The gearing probably will be fine. When you upgrade power like that, it all kind of depends on when the power is delivered. So if you have a ton of additional power at the low end, it's going to put a ton of additional strain on things like the drop gears, and the clutch system. All of those things are going to see that abrupt power coming from the engine now being delivered to the gearbox. If your power is up higher, your engine and your mechanical bits inside it are given a little bit more leeway because you're getting that power gradually. So it's the same way that if somebody like yanked on your neck, it would hurt. But if someone like just tugged on your neck and moved it, it doesn't hurt as much, even if you are getting your neck kind of pulled to a faster and faster speed. It's kind of a weird analogy, um, but yeah, hopefully that helps. If you want to send me the like full specs or anything, if you want to post those in the chat, or if you want to send them to me in an email, I'll help you decipher and figure out what else, if anything, you need to upgrade. All right. Once you have the motor work completed, what is the next plan for Bad Wolf? So I think that we are actually starting to kind of reach the end of the road on Bad Wolf. I have done a lot of things on this car over the years. Like, just to kind of bring you guys through it, if you haven't been with the channel for a long time, it started as an 850cc Mini. That was before I bought it. I imported it from Canada. It came with a 1275 in it. We used that 1275, brought it to 1293, kept it with that and a set of dual carbs like this for quite a few years. I drove it a lot, like 10, 15,000 miles on the car. And then over the years, I have kind of tinkered and upgraded it. So I moved to a single carburetor to see what that was like. And then I moved to obviously the supercharged setup. That was a very fun build. Um, Upgraded that to get more power, which is always the kind of goal that we end up striving for. Then we moved to the turbo. That was a turbo carburetor setup, and now we're at a turbo EFI setup. And I do think that's probably kind of the end of the line for it. We're not getting rid of the car or anything like that, but the only other thing that I could see happening to this car in the future, I really just want to drive it. I don't want to work on it anymore, at least within reason. I would, at some point, the paint and the body is starting to get really, really worn and bad. Some spots are starting to rust, things like that, because it has been driven and used over the last 12 years. Um, and I think I'll probably repaint it. And when I repaint it, I'll probably redo the wiring again and kind of just really, really focus on tidying everything up so that this engine bay looks really tight and clean, but also everything else in it is very nice, mechanically sound, and in its rightful home. When you kind of build things on top of things over the years, it starts to compound, and like there's old holes in the bulkhead and little things like that. So that'll probably be in a few years. The cost of painting a car right now is like, honestly, it's astronomical. I just can't even consider it right now. Um, Gonzalez says, did you install a knock sensor? So with my setup, I did not decide to go with a knock sensor. That said, it is a very good thing to consider. One of the other folks that are in this chat, or at least if he's still on here, Steve, Turbo Cooper Sport, is doing a Haltech ECU like I am, but he's doing an Elite 1500, which allows for knock detection. And that knock detection sensor, I believe he is putting in one of the mounting holes or bolt holes that's on the front of the block. I think long term, I might consider upgrading to the 1500 and putting a knock sensor in, but I'm very comfortable with the ignition timing and where it's at. And I don't think that I'm not going to be pushing the envelope of power on this car a lot. So didn't feel like something that was absolutely necessary. However, as I said, long term, that'll be something that I want to add. I think we'll see. Team Valulock says, same twins I'm running on my 1293 Cooper S engine, conversion to the Traveler. Yes. See, so these carbs also were the original ones that were on this Cooper S engine, and they're lovely. Like, I just can't say enough good stuff about them. They do also have, some people would upgrade them to dual H4s or dual HS4s. That's a nice upgrade for really, really high power 1275s, Cooper S 1275s, if you want to keep it like period specific. But yeah, Good carbs. Supers, emo, em, mm, I don't know how to say your name, but the Superman logo, I see, I recognize that, says just had my engine bored out and rebuilt, but they forgot to fit the distributor um, in it is an easy job to time correctly. I couldn't see any timing marks on my crank. So yes, it is pretty straightforward to time. There are two things. Let me grab out of my toolbox. I'm going to show you what you need. Well, I thought I had a distributor drive gear, but if you don't have a Haynes manual, I would strongly recommend you get that. There's a section about setting the static or the base timing, not static, the base timing. And there's two parts, I guess maybe three parts. There's something called a distributor drive gear that is inserted in the larger hole on the front of the block. That needs to go in at a specific orientation with your engine at top dead center on the compression stroke, on the first cylinder. Left that bit out. With it on that compression stroke, the drive gear gets put in a specific orientation, and then your distributor gets driven in behind that. It's not a super complex process, but one you'll want to follow the steps in that Haynes manual, in that book. They outline every detail that you need to know about setting that. And then using that, you set the rotor so that it is pointing towards the first piston, and then you kind of tweak it from there. But I would really, really recommend getting yourself a Haynes manual. It's going to make the process most easy. Although people have copied and pasted and shared this information on things like the mini forum over the years. So check that out as well. Let's see here. Mark Price says, is the engine going on the dyno? The Cooper S engine. So that'll be up to Will. We don't have an engine-only dyno available to us here in the US. I shouldn't say the whole US. Here in North Carolina and in the surrounding states. We don't have people who are comfortable or who have the hardware to mount up to the flywheel on the side. So we won't be able to dyno test it as an engine only. I think that I would hope that Will wants to do it after it's in the car. I know that he has some restoration work to do on the car before it's ready to drive. But we'll put that in his car. We'll get it running. We'll get it working really great. And then we have a local dyno that does mini carburetor, Alfa Romeo, all those kinds of things that work. And they will most likely be the ones that would do the dyno work unless Will has somebody he wants to work with specifically. I do definitely want to see the power on this engine because working with Paul over at HRE, we put a ton of work into dialing in the compression ratio just right. Did a lot of chamber work, did a lot of block work. The pistons are the high comp pistons, all to make it work really nice and seamlessly together. It's going to be a very nice engine. It also has straight cut gears. It's a 3 synchro box, which is the older style gearbox. But I think it's going to be, I'm very, very hopeful and confident that it is going to, exceed power expectations, but won't know until we get it there. Silver Beef says, good morning all. Welcome, welcome. Says, cool, thanks. I got the manual. Gonzalo Navarro says, will you install a camshaft sensor? So there's not a great place on the carbureted blocks for a camshaft sensor, but there is a good spot on MPI blocks for a cam sensor. I won't be installing one, but it will be something that I have to consider if I want to do knock detection in the future, as I understand it. But that'll be a road that I cross at that time. It's definitely not something that I want to think about right now. I want to make sure that this gets running really nicely so that the ECU map, the fueling and the ignition map that I share online is going to be a good base for other people to start with. Man, I forgot to drink some water. Oh, I see Joe Mergens asked a question, but the message was retracted. Let's tidy up the chat here a minute. So I'm going to pin my technical website to the top of the chat. So if anyone wants to see the tech tools that are available, all of them are free, easy to access. You can look them up on your phone. And for those of you who are familiar with the concept, it is something called a progressive web application, which means that you can actually install it without any sort of installing any software, nothing like that. You can pin it directly to your home screen on your phones, no matter what kind of phone you have, and it makes it a little bit easier to access. And you can access it offline too. Lewis says, just to thank you for answering my question, re the SBI ECU and your fuel injection. Well understood. And by the way, sending this comment from Capri, Italy. Could not miss your video. Cheers. Thank you for joining. We are, speaking of Italy, so excited about going to IMM Italy. I feel like it has been years since I was at the last IMM. The one that I went to was in 2018. It's crazy to think about how many years ago that was. What a blast it was, but I'm definitely ready to see an IMM again. I do wish that there was an IMM in the US, but I guess there just weren't ever enough minis there for it to really constitute hosting one. But definitely looking forward to IMM Italy. If you guys are going to be there, come and find me. I am going to be there on the Friday and the Saturday. We're going to stop by as part of a larger Italy trip. We're going to do all sorts of really cool stuff, like go hike the Dolomites, going to go see Verona. We've been to Italy a few times. For those of you who don't know, I'm also an Italian citizen. So we we love Italy. It is like a second home to us. We absolutely love it. We being my wife and I. And so looking forward to getting back there and also seeing some minis while we're there too. Oh, was it 2019, Steve? See, I don't know about these things. The time. What is time? It just all blurs together after a while. So, bop, bop, bop. Man, what a good chat we've had so far. This has been great. It's been nice getting connected up with everybody and all the regular viewers who join in. The last live stream we did, I think, was with me and Paul. And we haven't been able to sync up for another Let's Talk Shit, but hopefully we'll be able to get back into the rhythm on those at some point in the near future. A few people have asked about that, so it is in the back of our minds. We just haven't been able to get synchronized and make it work. So we'll get there. Um, let's see. Joe says, good morning. Recently, my 1275 is running a little warmer than normal, at least according to the gauge. What is a good temp range for the 1275? The 998 ran dead center after warming up. Yep. So two things. One, sometimes sensors go bad. If it is a sensor being run through the voltage regulator, it might be that your voltage regulator is starting to have some problems. That's just something to keep in the back of your mind as something worth considering. Assuming the gauge is working properly, is it a gauge that has like actual values on it, or is it just like the C and the H and then the little notches? The Mini can run, and usually it's like optimal running temperature, no matter which A series engine you have, is about 95, 95 Celsius. So that's like kind of perfect performance area. It can get a little bit hotter than that, but anywhere up at like 99 to 100 Celsius, I would definitely start to like think about why it's starting to overheat or why it's starting to get hotter. Things that can be causing that, very simple fix might just be that you need a little bit more coolant. Um, I don't remember where you are in the world, Joe, but if it is starting to get hotter where you are, you might just need to adjust to the mixture. Places like Charlotte and North Carolina, and just specifically the American South, it gets really hot in the summer. And so most of us will run a higher water content and lower antifreeze content in our coolant as a result. So something like 80-20 or 70-30. 70%, or the larger numbers in those being water, distilled water, and then the smaller percentage being coolant or antifreeze. Now, that would require you to get a non-pre-diluted setup, a jug of coolant. So just keep that in mind. Something else to check to make sure that your thermostat is opening when it should. I don't know what temperature thermostat you have. It could also be getting stuck if it's an older one. And then you can start thinking if those things don't fix it, things like, is there an air leak somewhere that's letting air into the system? Is the car running all right? Things like a head gasket failure can cause heat issues in the car. And then all of this, I would check one thing before doing that, and that's just to make sure that your gauge is working. I have this like laser heat gun. This I got off of Amazon. I think it was like $20. And if you turn it on, I don't think you can see it in the video, but you can basically point it at anything. It has a little laser that will show up wherever you want the temperature from, and it'll give you a good average reading. And I would just try and take a reading right next to the thermostat and see, okay, is it actually hot? Is it actually similar to what the gauge is telling me? Just to verify that. All right, let's see here. Joe says runs F to C off the so Spanish notched gauge. Got it. Okay. Um, yeah, I would check first just to make sure that the temperature is actually, is it actually getting too hot or is it just the gauge that's misreading? And it also could be the temperature sender, the actual piece that's measuring the temperature. So a few different things to check there for sure. Salon 850 says, why the change from carbs to injection? I had an SPI as my first carb, but much prefer working on carb models. I have a 1275S, 970S, and a 1071S, and an 850 Mini Super. Are each one of those a different Mini, or do you have like different engines? Either way, a very cool collection of engines or Minis. Uh, so I am, my day job is I'm a web application developer and I love technology. So that's part of it. But the SPI setup and specifically the original fuel injected setups are a far cry different than a modern fuel injected configuration using like a modern throttle body, ECU, all of those things. When comparing an SPI to a carb, I would choose a carb every day. The SPI it's not bad, but between the two, I just enjoy working on the carb over an SPI or an MPI. But if the choice was between a carburetor and a modern ECU and a modern EFI system like this one, I would choose the EFI system most of the time. Only because it's very easy to configure. It's very easy to get all your engine information. And it's fun to tinker with technology from my perspective. That's kind of just a personal opinion. Luis says, my Mini is from Marbella, Spain, and as you know, very hot during the summer. Just changed my radiator and the thermostat is pretty bad. Which one to be replaced by? 74C would be good. 74C actually might be a little early opening. It At the end of the day, once your engine is like fully up to temperature, your thermostat is going to be open pretty much consistently at that whatever the temperature is. Even the higher temperature thermostats are opened after it's past operating temperature. So the kind of benefit of getting a lower opening thermostat, something at like 74 or 85C, is that it opens up when the engine is going through its initial warm up, it's going to get through that initial warm up a lot faster. And then you can start to allow cooling to happen a little bit earlier. I would just say that, I mean, that's probably going to work fine, especially with the hot summers. But you don't necessarily need a 74. You don't need it to open quite that early. But if that's what you've got, I would just stick with it. I don't think you need to change it. Um, let's see here. Kevin says, hey Cole, so happy you making a live on my 34th birthday. Continue your nice videos and work. Always a pleasure to watch. Thank you so much, Kevin, and happy birthday to you. My wife's birthday was actually just earlier this week, and she also turned 34. I am not far behind her. My birthday is in May, so I'll be 34 in May. Sounds like there's a lot of us millennials out there starting to get into our 30s. Salon 850 says each different models of Mini 1275S is a 1965 Morris Cooper S Deluxe in tweed gray. That is such a nice color. I love that color. 970 is a custom color. 1071 is a rally spec works replica. Man, sounds like you've got some really fun cars to work with. That's very, very cool. I definitely would love to have more minis in the future. As you can see, my garage is not enormous. It's just big enough for me to work on my mini and the things that I work on in here. Um, Funny enough, I haven't actually shared this with any of the other episodes or anyone else aside from some close friends, but once this project finishes, my wife and I are actually probably going to get ourselves a Sprinter van. This is not set in stone yet, but I think we're going to get one for like van life, one that can tow the Mini, but also go a little bit kind of down forest service roads and go camping and things of that nature. It's definitely something that we really love. So the Mini content there might be some additional content on this channel here in the near future. Someone says, and the 850 is 1962 in tartan red with a black roof. They were only made for a year. Having four of them, I don't have much room to work on them. Yeah, I can only imagine. If I definitely could, I could fit probably four minis next to each other down this garage, but not in any sort of functional way. It'd be just purely for storage. I need those like wheel dollies, where you can turn it and rotate the car. But yeah. So this has been great. Thank you everybody for joining in so far. While we are at a lull in questions, I just want to mention that until the end of September, I've got a sale going on for all of my like cold weather merch on my store. So if you want to pick up and support the channel, I have new beanies, I have a sweatshirt now, all sorts of really cool stuff using like recycled materials so that they're a little bit more eco-friendly. And then, of course, I have some water bottles, all sorts of really cool stuff that just launched actually last week. So if you want to check any of that out or just help support the channel, head over to the merch store and pick some up. I'm actually wearing some of my merch right now. This is a brand new t-shirt, new color. You probably have seen this before, but it's my old black shirt. Marcos SO says, regards from Brazil. Thank you for joining in. Hello. I don't know if I've ever had anybody joining in from Brazil before. Maybe I have in a previous live stream, but not that I remember. So you might be the first one, Marcos. All right. So what other questions you guys got for me? We had some pretty good ones so far. These are some pretty in-depth questions. I'm not most of the time folks are asking a little bit more straightforward ones. So thank you for the challenges. Jordan Garth says hello from Finland. Hello, welcome. Is there a big mini scene in Finland? I have not seen a lot of viewers. I've seen some from Norway and from Denmark, but I have not seen a lot from Finland. I kind of assumed that the weather would make mini driving pretty difficult. Let's see here. Kevin says, so what do you plan on doing on your next mini? Plan next on your mini. You might, so I mentioned a little bit earlier, but I think the next steps are really one, drive it, enjoy it, have fun, and just like only kind of work on things as they break or are needed to be worked on. But maybe in a year or two, I'm thinking I'll probably repaint it, need to redo a lot of body work. And at that time, I'll probably pull the engine out and like really do a complete shell restoration. The last time that was done was almost 14 years ago when I first got the car. And so it's definitely showing its age. I probably will change the color. I know that might be kind of sacrilegious, but I kind of want to do something new and different. But that'll all be kind of down the road. And then I'll obviously do all sorts of other tidy up and clean up on the car at the same time. So should be pretty cool. But unless I win the lottery sometime soon, that's definitely going to have to wait a little while. Jordan Garth says, big fan from a long time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. He says, yes, there's many, but Finns are very quiet. Not really. I live in Lapland, and I drive my Mini whole winter long. Man, that's really cool. Yeah, that's I have some friends that live in Oslo. It's obviously not Finland, but that has been their experience with Finnish people as well. Very quiet people. I don't know if that's. It sounds like that might be kind of a common thread, but that's very cool. It's nice. So, what do you do to your Mini in order to get it, functioning and working well in the winter? Do you have like a nice set of winter tires and stuff? I picture like big knobby tires with studs on them that you drive in the winter. Um, Geek says, "How are your ProTech dampers doing?" They are top notch. I am so happy with those dampers. Like, one, they were such a huge difference between my really tired gas shock absorbers, which were great when I first got them, but obviously they were very old and tired. But so there was a huge difference between old and obviously brand new dampers, but the ProTech ones have been so comfortable. But one thing that one of my patrons mentioned in our chat, so Kenny, the gentleman that I built the engine for, lives out in Texas. Um, he's got an orange Mini. You guys might have seen it on the channel pop up here and again. But when we were in the mountains, we were hitting these corners, real, and intense corners. He had the same tires as me, but a different set of shocks. And I was almost throughout the whole drive, I was able to maintain and stay planted in those corners, which I attribute to the Protect shocks providing a nice level of dampening in the bumps and everything. So I wasn't ending up with like a lot of judder and loss of traction. And so it was really cool. So I just cannot say enough good things about them. They were a blast. Jordan says he has a Longbridge Mini 1973. Very cool. What are your plans with the Mini next? Are you doing any big build on it, or just enjoying it and driving it as is? Pop, pop, pop. What do you guys think about this new live stream setup? Can you hear me okay? Does the video look good? I'm actually doing this from my new iPhone, and my AirPods and my mic. Trying something a little bit like less complicated than what I did before, but I personally really like having this computer here. It's easier for me to read the chat than scrolling through on my phone. That's not too easy. Oh man. I'm very proud of myself. I actually remembered to bring water this time. By the end of these live streams, I would always end up with like the driest mouth. And for those of you in the US, I don't know if you got these commercials, but the clear eyes, or dry eyes, try clear eyes. That was what was going on with my mouth and my throat after talking. Because right now I look like a crazy person for anyone else that would walk in here. I'm literally just talking to a phone by myself. Awesome. Getting a little bit of feedback there about the lighting and audio. Very glad to hear that. Um, Kevin says, "His setup is nice. I'm jealous even if I got a 24 by 24 garage." Yeah, that's a little bit bigger than the one that I'm in right now. But this garage has been a labor of love and a long time coming. For those of you who've been with the channel for a while, you definitely know I used to do all of my videos in my carport, open to the elements. And then I had like a little teeny workshop that I would film my videos in. Everything would be all inside there. Having the space to expand and also kind of leave projects in a in progress state has been like paramount. I can't tell you how nice it's been. Like doing the C of I conversion, instead of having to clean up everything every single day, I can say, okay, I'm going to wire a bunch of stuff today, leave my tools as is, and then go in, go to bed, have a few days off, come back in and pick it up right where it was, instead of like, I got to put my tools away, I got to put my multimeter away, I got to put all my wiring away, all that stuff. So, um, let's see here. Jordan says, "Not going to lie, sometimes it's hard to to start. I keep it in a heated garage, running 13-inch tires. That's surprising to me. with some custom-made Nokia spike tires. That's cool. I'd love to see pictures of those. I don't know if you have any photos of them, but if you would be willing to send those to me, I'd love to see it. My email is classicminidiy@gmail.com. Todd Dunning says, needs to be a drinking live stream like May and Hammond. That's not a bad idea. Um, I'd probably have to do it a little bit later in the day because it's not even noon yet. But I don't know. I could get away with it maybe on Sunday and say that they do like mimosas or something, and be like, oh yeah, it's morning brunch with Classic Mini DIY. Mark Price says, hi again. Would you change the color of Bad Wolf? Um, yes, I probably would. I have um, I have recently kind of fallen in love with the color green. It says man with green watch, green shirt, green water bottle, green truck outside. I really like. There's for those of you who have an Instagram, check out Page Three Racing. They have a green mini, and that's probably the color I would want to do. It's just gorgeous. Like I love it so much, and I'd probably redo the interior with like a kind of a tannish brown color, and really, really like do something wild and different. Something that I haven't done before because blue has been the motif of this car for so many years. But it's funny too because if I did green on the car, I'd also have to repaint the engine. And what color would I paint the engine? Would it be, the original green, or would I do something different? Hard questions that don't have good answers yet. CJ Laser says, good morning. Thanks for joining. Good morning. Jordan says, planning to install an HIF or similar to the setup you did once with an electronic coil and startup. Yes, so I would say that the HIF 44 is going to be great. I think you actually might, I don't know if you have dual carbs right now or a single carb, but I always found that my dual carburetors started up better on cold mornings. Obviously, it's never as cold as it is in Finland, here in Charlotte. But I would, if you're thinking about changing out the carbs and you don't have dual setup right now, I would consider doing that because I think you'll have once they are once they are tuned and synchronized, I think you'll have a much better experience in really cold weather. But that's kind of just my personal opinion based on my experience. But yeah. CJ Laser says, I'll be rebuilding my HS2 carb this weekend. Any advice? I would say the biggest piece of advice is get some Tupperware containers, organize the bits as they come off, and also start with a clean workbench. There have been a few times that I have started rebuilding carbs and I have had crap and shit all over my workbench, and then you lose bits, you lose parts. It's very frustrating. So take your time, and if you do it slow and you just take your time and enjoy it, it can be a really cathartic and like therapeutic process. And if you don't have a ultrasonic cleaner, I would consider getting that too. Just make sure you use the right solution for aluminum. Let's see here. Ba, ba, ba. Todd says it's been working super well for me to put the tools away after every task, even if I know I'll need them for the next one. Tools all over the place, all over just compound my confusion. That is a fair point. I when I was in training to become a diesel mechanic, that was one thing that my instructor always told us was um, leave your workspace clean. And I think there's a happy medium between like putting everything away and then putting nothing away. Like if you find that medium, like, okay, leave the wires kind of where they were. For example, if we're doing wiring work, leave them where they are so that you know where, what you were working on before, but maybe do put the tools away so that the space is clean. And then you can come back out and just take out the tools that you actually need for the job that day. Um, Kevin says, I have a Lucas 64D distributor. Should I upgrade it with a 123 distributor or something like that, like this, or stick with the Lucas with my HIF? I would say that if the 64D is working well, I don't see any reason to upgrade it. The one thing that is nice about the 123 is it's digital, which is a huge plus for me because digital means that you can adjust the curves with the touch of a button. So, a distributor, let's just take a look at this one for the Cooper S. All of this is using points, but all of this is static. It's curved in a very specific way, and it's made to specifically work in the setup that I have this engine for, which is going to be awesome. Like, we knew the carbs we were going to be using. We knew the engine displacement, compression, all of those things can be paired with a really nice curve. There's a whole science to it that is way above my head. But that said, if you are, if you need a new distributor and you want to try some different ignition curves, the 123 is really nice to do that because you can literally change them on a dime and you can say, okay, this is the curve for that's used on a Cooper S. How does that run on my car? Oh, it runs like garbage. Now I'm going to try a different curve. And you might find that ignition curves that were never made for the Classic Mini might really work nicely for you. So that's one thing I do like about the 123. So hopefully that helps. Joe says, my green mini is running a red block like Christmas. That's fun. Yeah. I don't know if that's the route I would take. But I will say that it would be kind of cool to do some sort of like wild one of my patrons, I don't know if he's in the chat right now, um, in Utah has done Cerakote on a lot of his parts. So like his gearbox has been Cerakoted. It's kind of like it's similar to powder coating. It's similar to ceramic coating. It's not identical to those, but it's a bonded finish. It looks so good, and you can do some really really cool, unusual colors with it. So it would be neat. It would be very very cool to Cerakote the engine block if it ever came back out with a specific color, something that like just simply isn't on any other Mini. And same for the gearbox, all that stuff could make a really, really cool looking setup. Um, Jordan says, "Ooh, thanks so much for that tip. Wouldn't know that." Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help out. Todd says dual carbs mean at least one will work. Yeah, but unfortunately, with the Mini, with the Siamese ports and the way that that's all set up, you would only have half of the engine working, which is not ideal. Not ideal. I guess there is a pass through between the two carbs, but I don't think that you're going to get a lot of fuel pass through between the two. Um, Gonzalez says, will you upgrade to individual coils and which spark plugs are better with fuel injected systems? So I'm assuming with the individual coils, you're referring to coil on plug. I don't think I'll ever, well, I won't say ever. I might upgrade to that in the future, but compared to having a single ignition coil, there isn't a whole lot of like additional benefit, I guess is the best way to put it. Maybe if it was a completely net new build, I might consider that, but you also have to accommodate like a new rail to hold those coil plugs. Um, so I would say I don't have any plans right now to do it, but I'm not saying I wouldn't in the future. Regarding the spark plugs, let me just make sure that I tell you the right ones here. I actually just threw away a box earlier today, which I can't figure out where I put. Um, I always get the letters mixed up, but I like the NGK spark plugs. They're BP7RES, I think, is the model number. I always get those jumbled up, but the main thing is that the spark plugs that you get need to be resistor type spark plugs. If you don't, you run the risk of getting a whole bunch of additional electronic uh, lost my train of thought. Um, Electromagnetic interference coming from those spark plugs and from those coils. So the resistor in those is helping to prevent that noise. Always get resistor ones if you're running an ECU. It's just going to make everything run much nicer. Regarding which plugs, there's a BP6R and then a BP7R. The sevens burn a little hotter, so depending on which engine you have, you might not need the sevens. The sixes are also very nice and work well. Or just the same type of plug sold by a different company. NGK sells them, it's very common on a Mini, but there are lots of other ones that are basically identical. So let's see here. Jordan says, "What suspension setup would you recommend for the most for fast road driving? You have used the coilovers and the red dots." So I have never run coilovers on my car. What I have run is cones, the regular rubber cones. Those were great. They're honestly really great. And Mini Spare sells a set that are called Evo or Evolution dampers that are the rubber cones. For an easy upgrade, I would just go with those and pair them with a nice set of shocks. I'm very partial to my ProTech shock absorbers. I'm very happy with them. They have a lot of adjustability, so you can kind of tailor it to the way you like to drive. That said, if you want to upgrade a little bit more or just try something different, I have coil springs that replaced my cones, but they're not coil overs. Um, and those are the red coil springs. Depending on which supplier you buy them from, they're different. So different colors may mean different things. But I bought mine from 7 Mini Parts. There are some safety pieces. I talk about it in my conversion video I did quite a few years ago. The things that you need in order to make sure that setup is safe and won't have any sort of failures that you probably have seen horror stories about on Facebook. If they're set up correctly, they will not fail in that way. But there's those two options. I would say the easiest though is a nice set of adjustable shocks like the ProTech shocks and the Evolution rubber cones. I think you'll be very, very happy with those. CJ says, my Mini has been sitting in storage since 2002 before I acquired it. What are the first steps I should take to get it roadworthy? It has spark, and I'm rebuilding the carb. I would check all of your fluids. I would kind of plan to replace all of your fluids. Uh, you could probably get away with not replacing things like the brake fluid, assuming it's clear or clean looking. If it's dark, you probably want to get that out of there and get new fluid in. But definitely check the radiator fluid, see what color it is, see what it looks like. I would probably just flush it and get a new coolant in there. Excuse me. And then definitely change the oil. It doesn't matter, whether I would, even if you put new oil in when it went into storage, I would still change that oil. And then I would say after changing the oil, after changing the radiator fluid, maybe the brake fluid, just kind of go through the electric system just to make sure that you don't see any weird wires that are sticking out, or disconnected. And then just try starting it. You can try spinning it over without spark to make sure that you get oil pressure. Definitely worth checking. And then after that, yeah, just see how it runs and kind of, go from there. Then for your first drive, I would take a look at all of the suspension parts. Make sure everything's tight. Make sure everything's connected, not like just hanging about. And check for any leaks on the fuel, on the engine. If you see any oil leaks, see where those are coming from. Just a general safety check. Todd says your VW Golf coil pack suggestion was great. Thank you. And I'm assuming we would stick with the cooler BP7. Yes. Did I say that the BP7 was hotter or cooler before? I think I got them flipped. Anyway, yes, BP7 is perfect for turbo setup and the Golf coil pack. I'm actually really fond of that. It was very easy to get mounted, set up, and running. This was the one that I was using before. It's a Ford coil pack, if I remember correctly, but they don't sell them really in the US. Not these ones. They were never really used on cars here. So the VW one is very affordable and easy to replace and find replacement parts for. So definitely recommend that, especially if you're in the US. Um, Mark Price says, have you got the original paperwork for Bad Wolf? Anything like a paper logbook or shipping records would be a nice touch. Yeah, I don't have that paperwork, unfortunately, but I do have a heritage certificate that I got for the car, which is very cool. The car was never a complete original car, if that makes sense. I mean, when I bought it, it was at some point in its history. But when I got it, it already had a 1275 in it. There were already some swaps done to it. So it wasn't a fully original car, but I do have some pretty cool information about it. So it was a Morris Mini Minor Saloon. It was built in May of 1960 and sold in May of 1960. It was an export to the Canadian market. It is a Canadian car. Despite it being right-hand drive, that was something I did when I first got it because I just thought it was really cool to have a right-hand drive car. But it is actually a Canadian car, so it was a left-hand drive one. Um, and some of the details about it, it actually had white wall tires from the dealer, a factory heater, which was apparently an upgrade. And the original car was a deluxe edition, and it was a Clipper blue in color. So not that blue. And ironically, I didn't know that it was originally blue when I painted it blue. When I got it, it was the Mr. Bean yellow color. But yeah, originally it was a Clipper blue, which is kind of a lighter blue. Um, let's see here. Todd says, should I switch from my gas to the Protex or are they close enough? If you already have and bought your gas shock absorbers, I would just keep those. I think you're going to be really happy with them. They were great on my car for all the years that I had them. And I have recently, I found out since making that video originally about the Protec upgrades, that Protec, but I thought only Protec did this, which is where you can send them your older shocks and have them rebuilt. Gaz apparently does this as well. So if you have, I could have, if I had wanted to, take my Gaz shock absorbers, sent them back, had them rebuilt as new, and I could have kept using them. So I love companies that do that kind of stuff because it keeps a product. It They care about making it last. And it's not just trash. It's not something you just throw away at the end of use. You can reuse it, rebuild it, and keep it alive. So um, let's see here. Blah blah blah. Oh, I caught up with all the questions. Let's see here. How long? We have been in here for about an hour. So I'll probably do another 15 minutes or so, and then we'll start wrapping up this live stream. I was kind of setting aside an hour this morning. If you guys follow me, I don't know if I've actually posted on my mini channel, Instagram, but we got a new puppy. And he is in lots of training right now. My wife is definitely the primary trainer. She is a saint. She is so good at training with him. But we're going to be going to the park this afternoon and taking him for a nice little training session, which should be a lot of fun. Um, let's see here. Todd says, oh, wow. So you are Mark 1 998 Deluxe like mine, but it looks like it was updated from some previous owner, Mark 2 or 3-ish. Yeah, so mine actually was an 850 from the factory. The 1960s, I don't have a Cooper. The Coopers were the 998s. Mine was just a mini minor saloon, Morris mini minor saloon. So it definitely came with the 850, just bog standard 850. It's probably a speed machine when I first got it, or when whoever bought it first got it. That's sarcasm, in case it wasn't clear. So let's see here. CJ says my Mini's in 1972, Leyland built. It's 99% original. Wow, that's really cool. So if it's mostly original, there's a really, really fine line between not fine line, contentious, controversial. I don't know. So I personally really like a car that's like super, super original. I like the idea of preservation. And so one of my friends did a really cool thing. He had a Cooper S that was damn near perfectly original, but the paint was starting to show age. There were some rust spots, but not like dramatic rust. And so what he did was he took the car to a body shop and had them clean it, but no sanding, no nothing like that, and just brought it and put a clear coat over it to kind of preserve its current state because of its originality, which was pretty cool. So it kind of gave that new, clean, fresh, shiny sheen to it, but it kept all the paint original, and helped keep it from wearing more over the years, which I thought was pretty cool. So that's all to say. I guess it's personal preference. I can't tell you what you should do. I like keeping things like that original, but I obviously am not against taking a non-original car and totally doing something wild with it. So, just about what your end goals for the car are. Let's see here. Todd says, "Let's meet your wife." She's working on stuff right now. She probably won't come out here. Silver Bee says, "How hard is it to install a second gas tank?" It takes a certain amount of confidence. So, a second gas tank would be all of the cars originally were on our left-hand tanks. So you have the tank neck coming out the side, and then if you want to add another one, it'd be a right-hand tank. But in order to do that, you have to really, really measure where that spout is going to come out because you have to drill a really quite a large hole in the body of your car to get that tank to come out that side so you can fill it up. And so that part is probably the hardest part. The rest of it's pretty easy in terms of like running the lines to connect the two of them, but it also adds a certain level of like additional work when you go to the fuel tank or fuel pump because you got to fill up both sides of the car. So I don't know. I think you can achieve a larger fuel capacity by adding a later tank like an SPI or an MPI fuel tank, which will give you more fuel capacity. And without having to drill, I think that's probably the easier route. So, Jordan says you're officially invited to come to Lapland, and we'll take you on a drive some that on a frozen lake. That sounds incredible. I'll shoot you a message the next time that we are up in the Scandinavian area because we have plans to go visit our friends in Norway. So I might reach out to you on that. Mark Price says suggestion for a mini engine build next for Bad Wolf BMW 8 or 16 valve motor bike head. I have wanted to do one of those for so long. I think they're incredibly cool. I don't think it would go in this car. I'd want to put it in something new. I really like a mini pickup that I could do something really fun with the engine. That would be cool. Oh, hey, HREIRL, thank you for the donation. I really appreciate that. That donation definitely helps with all the stuff that I'm doing on this car. So thank you so much for that. And I missed having our live chat, so hopefully we see you again soon. Appreciate it. Let's see here. Kevin says mine arrived in Gatineau. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I'm very sorry. In Quebec in 2006 from England. It's a 1983 Mini Mayfair with an MG Metro 1989 1275 A plus engine. Nice. Is that the turbo Metro engine or just the regular Metro engine? I'm not super familiar with those. Um, let's see here. Yeah, that going back to the BMW head and mini engine setup, I think that would be so cool. I don't know that there's truly a lot of performance benefit over like a cross-flow engine, cross-flow cylinder head, something with the intakes on the front. But it would be a really fun project to also fuel inject with those BMW heads or with the cross-flow engines. You don't have the Siamese port issues that you used to have, or that I currently have with this build, or at least the complications that you have to think about because that cross-flow head has intakes going into each of the ports. It allows you to put an injector in each one of them and control fueling into each port individually. And you can do that with carburetors too. But the fuel injected throttle bodies are more compact, so you don't have to do body cuts and things like that. So let's see here. Eduardo says, would you be interested in opening, working, rebuilding, messing, boring an automatic 998 just for fun and to see how much power you can get? I personally wouldn't. This engine build over here is probably going to be the last one I do for a customer for a little while. Only because just like my time constraints, I just don't have enough time to dedicate to another engine build. It's funny you ask about an automatic gearbox because I don't know if you can you see when I move my water bottle. So that tote back there in that black bag is an automatic gearbox. It's one that was donated to me from my buddy that I was going to do a video on. it's literally been sitting there for almost a month and a half now, and I haven't done a video. So that just to give you an idea, I don't know when I would have time to do it. I'm sorry. Um, but all of that said, I think that actually answers Tim Walter's question. It's not an SPI automatic transmission. It's just an automatic transmission off of a 998. But as far as I know, they're pretty similar. Uh, Automatic transmissions are getting really hard to find parts for, and like even larger shops, like the gearbox shop that's out there, Guessworks, isn't even doing rebuilds on them anymore. Unless that's changed, I don't think he rebuilds them because parts are simply so difficult to find. So when I take that apart, I'm actually not going to be doing a rebuild video. I would just be breaking it down to show you guys what it is, how it all goes together, and then I would probably sell all of the parts, that whole kit, as a job lot for somebody who maybe needs to rebuild theirs. Oh man. HRE coming in here with sneaky with a super chat and then doesn't ask any questions. This guy. Oh man. But yeah, why don't I wheel this over? I want to show you guys something. So I don't know if you guys can see it. The camera's a little too small. But HRE actually did the cylinder head on this engine. He did another one that's off to the side there too. Very, very nice work. If you haven't seen it, you should go over to his channel and check it out. He breaks down the whole process of building it, which is very cool to see. But he has a new little like a CNC laser cutter or something, and he made these like really cool wood covers for the ports on the back, so you don't get debris in there and crap in there. So and it has like his logo etched in there. That's something that I'm going to hold on to for sure. That's going to go up on the wall and get used in other builds. Just think that's so neat. I've seen like metal, really nice aluminum CNC'd ones from like Specialist Components and stuff, but there's something about this wood one that's just very like uh, retro, cool looking. I don't know. Classic Mini Projects USA. Hey, thanks for joining in. Alrighty, so we got just a few minutes left. If you guys have any more questions, now is the time to ask them. If you've been holding them in and just like, when am I going to ask this question? Now is the time. And we will probably start wrapping this up. Todd Dunning says, would be neat to see Hickey sell parts like CMDIY. I totally agree. He has some pretty cool stuff that he has shared with me that I can't share with you guys. They're secrets. But unless plans have changed, I know that he has got some pretty cool stuff in the works. So I guess that's all I'll say about that. I'm not going to spill his beans. Let's see here. Eduardo says there's a shop, A2 World. He has all the parts you could need for an automatic. He can rebuild or repair anything automatic. That's very cool. I'm going to have to bookmark that. A2 World. Does he have a website? A2 World. Well, nothing came up when I Googled it, but that's not to say that it doesn't exist. All right. Any other questions? I'm surprised that none have rolled in after I said that. Normally, when I say that we're wrapping things up, that's when I get like 5 or 6 more questions, and then you end up keeping me here for another 15 minutes. Not that I mind. I actually really enjoy sitting here talking about mini stuff. Um, but you guys are surprising me. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, then I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and do uh, some dog training. CJ Laser did come in with one more message. Would it be cool to send some photos of my mini? Yes, please do. I love seeing minis. My email address is classicminidiy@gmail.com. I get my email inflow it kind of changes. Sometimes I get a lot of emails, so I might not respond immediately. But if I'm not getting a lot in, then I probably will respond pretty quickly. So just something to keep in mind. Um, awesome. David says, "Can I send you mine for a rebuild? 1984 UK spec with 43,000 miles." If you do really want to rebuild and you're in the US, I do have some contacts for people who build them, who are very, very good at engine builds, and probably would love to take on the project. So, if you really do want it rebuilt, if you want some help with that, shoot me a message and I'll get you in contact with them. One thing I do want to mention that Todd actually brought up just now, for those of you who are not aware, I do have a Patreon. I hate bringing this up because it's like I hate asking for money, but my Patreon is a way to support the channel directly and help me fund projects like this, so I can then provide content for you guys. But it does come with a special perk of a live chat, a Discord server. We have a wonderful group of people in there. We're all working and helping each other work on their minis. But it is also a way to ask me questions if you want to ask those as you're going through a project. Quite a few of my patrons have become patrons during a engine rebuild to ask all the questions that they want to ask during that period and then sign off afterwards, which is totally fine. But it's a great way to get some community, and we are a no stupid questions zone in that we can it is totally okay, no matter how like remedial or small your question is or how complicated your question is. We have no judgment, and that's the main thing I like about our group. There's none of that Facebook drama. It's just let's work on some minis and have a good time. So if you guys want to become a channel supporter and get access to that live chat, I'm going to put my link in the description, or rather in the chat here. And please consider becoming a member. It helps out a lot. So thank you so much. Um, and I think I'll probably wrap things up right there. So until I see you guys again, you know the drill. And thank you so much for joining in. You know it. Enjoy those minis and motor on. I'll catch you on the next one. And now is the awkward moment where I have to walk over to my phone and end the live stream before. All right. Bye bye, guys. See you on the next one.